I'm actually pregnant with your baby, darling.
Oh, really? I guess we need to make a plan to get rid of the wife then, huh?
I was supposed to be enjoying dinner with my husband and the lady next door, but for some reason, I fell asleep during the little party. I woke up to find out that not only was my husband cheating on me, but he was also trying to get rid of me. And no, I don't mean that he wanted to divorce me. No, he was thinking of something far, far scarier. I feared what they might do to me if I immediately woke up and questioned them, so I pretended to be asleep and let the situation pass. Then I made some preparations. This is the story of how a stroke of luck quite literally saved my life, and how I was able to exact my revenge on the traitors who sought to cut me out of the big picture. My name is Nancy Gregory, and I'm a 29-year-old career woman working in customer service for a local business. I've been married to my husband, Ronan, for 2 years. We had no children as of when the whole story began, but we were getting along so very well with each other. We initially met during a blind date. Throughout my childhood and adolescence, to put it simply, I've always struggled when it came to meeting new people. It was darn near impossible for me to initiate a conversation with a stranger whenever I was in an environment when I was with people I didn't recognize. And whenever someone talked to me instead, I was always extremely self-conscious about how I phrased things. The nerves just always took a bit of a toll on me, and it wasn't very often that I found myself together with another person. And during my teen years, it got better with girls, and it got a whole lot worse with guys. A single instance of eye contact with a random guy my age would send my heart racing and a cold sweat to occur. Imagine me trying to talk with a guy now instead of just looking at one. It didn't get better even after I graduated college, and finally, a coworker of mine, who became my first close friend, was worried that I was too much of a lonely fanatic. So she arranged a blind group date for me, mostly. Ronan and I shared hobbies and interests so similar it was honestly suspicious. But I suppose finding someone who could speak my language got the better of me at that point, and there's always the alcohol to consider. We got to talking, and by the end of the group date, we had exchanged contact information. And a few days later, we arranged to go out to dinner together. These dinners became quite frequent, and a relationship blossomed very naturally. It blossomed even more when we got married after 3 years of being in a relationship. Since we both had the weekends off, we spent a lot of time together going on trips, going for walks in the park, and other wholesome stuff like that. Sometimes we would meet up after work on weekdays and have shopping dates. We were like passionate lovers through and through, and I was very happy with how things turned out in our relationship. More recently, however, Ronan's work had made him very busy, and he had been working extra hours, so we hadn't been able to go on the dates that I'd always looked forward to. I understood that he was busy with work, but he still came home unnaturally late. What exactly does unnaturally late mean, you ask? Well, as I mentioned, we both work, and the business we work for is very close to our house. Up until we got married, we lived together in the suburbs of the bustling downtown area. And we used to both take the train 20 minutes or more to get to the station closest to our workplace. But we eventually decided it would be better to be closer in an effort to economize some money and time. So when we tied the knot, we moved to a place 2 stops away from the nearest station. And yet, Ronan sometimes didn't come home until an hour after the last train. We live in a rather rural city, and the last train leaves very early compared to bigger cities. The last train arrives at our station just after 2300 hours. But sometimes he didn't get home until after midnight. In any case, in Ronan's line of work, there are few jobs that require him to work extra hours until that late. My husband works in face-to-face customer service, so even if he works late, he was usually finished by 9 p.m. I had some doubts about whether my husband was telling the truth or not, so I asked him about it.
Yeah, about that. I've actually been going out for drinks with my boss more and more these days. My boss lives nearby the station, after hours, and we drink until it's pretty late at night. Sorry about that.
Oh, is that so? I get worried when you get home after today becomes tomorrow, honey, so please try to come home as soon as possible.
I will, honey. Don't worry.
He replied, and needless to say, he seemed okay with my gentle prying. Ronan didn't really go out drinking very much, so I sometimes wondered why all these drinking parties started all of a sudden. But he was in his mid-30s, and I agreed with him that it was important to have a friendly relationship with his boss, considering his career prospects and hopes to be on the ladder to success. But there was one more thing that definitely changed that didn't exactly sit well with me. He actually started saving money. He used to buy whatever he wanted without hesitation, often waiting for the new stuff to be delivered without consulting me. I didn't say anything to him because he was doing it within the limits of his own money and never implied he wanted more or anything like that. Nevertheless, I had hoped that he would show a little more restraint. But more recently, he would be looking at my cell phone and say, "Ooh, this looks cool," but he never bought anything anymore. Hey, Ronan, you haven't bought anything you wanted recently. You know you don't have to stop for my sake.
Well, yeah, but to tell you the truth, I'm trying to save money.
Why don't you just go out on those drinking parties less often and buy what you want instead?
My seniors pay for the parties, and I don't have to pay for much on these occasions.
Then why don't you just buy the same things as usual, even if it's not that expensive? Haven't you been holding back, quite a bit lately?
But here's what I was thinking. That maybe I ought to save up for when we have kids.
Wait, what? You were thinking about having kids too? Well, no wonder you wanted to save up. I was frankly surprised that he was thinking about having kids. We hadn't been doing much of any husband and wife after dark activities more recently. But I was also so happy because I really didn't think he'd give a damn about the child. However, even after he said otherwise, he continued to come home late. And even on his days off, he often went to the office for whatever reason, or went out with his seniors. Needless to say, I was pretty devastated with my husband's lifestyle because I wanted to have a child at the ripe old age of 29. I was at my prime, and I felt ready to be a mother. Then one day, a young woman moved into the apartment next door. Her name was Miss Hannah Warsnop, and she was a very friendly girl with a bright, lively, talkative personality. "My name is Warsnop, and I've just moved in next door. I do hope we can be friends," she cheerfully said when she came to greet me when she moved in. Since then, we talked a lot every time we saw each other. She was very friendly, but I was sure there were many things about her that I just didn't know. Because she couldn't be someone like this all the time, even when she was alone, right? The apartment building was one full of rental apartments, but what with the flats being pretty spacious and relatively new, the rent was quite expensive for a single woman of Hannah's young age. She must have had a good job and made a lot of money, but she didn't seem to have a very busy life. She always left for work at the same time as me and came back mere minutes before or after I did. She also didn't seem to be working overtime at all, so I assumed that her job had to be one that paid extremely well. She must have been a very successful career woman who had worked her way up the ladder. She sure didn't look like that, but I supposed I stood corrected because with such good communication skills, on the opposite side of the spectrum compared to mine, success in life could come easy. One day, Hannah and I were talking when we met each other in the elevator. "Hey, can I visit your flat sometime soon?" "I surely wouldn't mind that at all, but I'll ask my husband." "Ah, yes. You are married, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. I'll ask him and let you know with the plans." With that, we parted ways for the day. Later that night, Ronan came back home from work, and over dinner, I asked him about Hannah's proposal from that morning.
What a good idea! I think we should be good neighbors to a young woman like her. We ought to invite her over for a dinner. You're a good cook anyway, right, Nancy? You can show off some of your skills to someone else for a change.
And so we made arrangements for Hannah to come over for dinner the following weekend. The day came quicker than I realized, and before I knew it, I was answering the door after Hannah rang the doorbell. I let her inside and immediately felt a little uncomfortable. Something wasn't right with how she interacted with my husband. They were getting along famously well, as though they'd known each other for years. It was surely their first meeting, and Hannah only said her last name when she introduced herself to me. And I myself had only told her my family name, Gregory, and I also never mentioned Ronan's name, so I was surprised that she immediately called him by his name. However, I decided to keep quiet because I knew that pointing it out right then and there would spoil the pleasant atmosphere we had planned for the night. Then we were eating my cooking. The menu for the night was baked salmon with a wasabi garlic dressing, basic white rice, a simple lettuce salad with goat cheese, and chocolate muffins, and drinking the splendid wine that Hannah had brought for the occasion. By nature, I am a relatively strong drinker and usually don't get drunk from alcohol that early. But for some reason, after 2 glasses of wine, I started getting really sleepy that evening. I fell asleep during the little party on the couch, and when I woke up, I looked at the wall clock and saw that it was approaching midnight. But I was more surprised when I started hearing voices coming from behind the couch. I was more surprised to see Ronan and Hannah cuddling each other passionately as though they were lovers. I'm sorry for what I did to your wife, darling, but you do realize you're mine, right, Ronan?
Of course I do, Hannah. I've always been yours. I'm so happy when I spend time with you. The time I spend together with Nancy doesn't even come close.
Oh, darling, you make me so happy. Miss Nancy's beautiful too, I guess. But we both know that there's no way she can compete with me. She's 7 years older than me, for one thing.
Of course not, Hannah. You're the most beautiful, lovely woman I've ever seen in my life. I still can't believe I'm doing this with you, right here, right now.
Thank you, darling. I really wanted to be alone with you today, like I usually do, so I put sleeping pills in the wine.
So that's why you didn't let me have the wine. Oh.
What a laugh. I probably should have woken up right away and questioned the 2 traitors, but what good would that do me in that moment? I instead kept my phone clutched in my hand and kept quiet. Then, more and more shocking revelations resonated in my ears. I'm actually pregnant with your baby, darling.
Oh, really? I never thought about having kids with Nancy, even though it looks like she wants to have some. But I'm so glad you're going to have my baby, darling.
Really? Then you and Nancy should get divorced as soon as possible.
I mean, of course. I would like to do that in a heartbeat. But the stupid law doesn't make it so easy. If I divorced her, and the reason was that I had an affair, I'm pretty sure I would have to pay Nancy alimony, right? See, I don't have much money saved up because of your situation, so...
I see. Well then, how about we... I couldn't hear Hannah's voice just then, but then I heard what Ronan said, and I immediately gulped.
I guess we need to make a plan to get rid of the wife then, huh?
Without a lingering thread of doubt, I immediately knew these 2 psychopaths were conspiring to kill me. I began to tremble with fear. I might have been toast if I hadn't done something about it right then and there. But I knew that now was the absolute worst time to attempt a retaliation. So I kept on breathing deeply and continued to pretend to be asleep. Both Ronan and Hannah took advantage of the fact that I was sleeping and did me a favor right then and there, and while I was grateful for the sheer stroke of luck that may have changed everything for the better, I felt nauseous with what I'd just witnessed. An hour later, Hannah said, I think Nancy is about to wake up, darling, so I think I'd better go. When I woke up, Ronan kissed me on the forehead and told me,
Hannah already left, honey. I was surprised that you fell asleep, considering you're pretty good against alcohol. Maybe you've become a weak drinker, eh?
He laughed and acted as though nothing absolutely horrendous had happened that evening. I think I've become a weak drinker too, to be honest. I replied and made it seem like I didn't hear a word. After that, I cleaned up the living room, took a bath, and went to bed. Perhaps Ronan was tired because he went to sleep very quickly. So I took the opportunity and checked his cell phone. It didn't take long before I stumbled upon a flood of messages sent to Hannah. We had never interfered with each other's social lives before, so I didn't think he thought I ever would look at his phone. He didn't try much at all to hide it. And not only were the messages flooding in, but so were the photographs. The messages revealed that the only reason he hadn't come home until ridiculously late at night before we moved into our current apartment was because he was at her house. It also seemed that he had told her that he had recently moved into a new apartment with his wife, and that he was hoping she would move into the same building with him. The messages said something like,
"Your house is a little far, Hannah, so I think you should move into the same apartment building as I did. There's a room next door that's just opened up."
"But I can't afford the apartment. I'm a worker by temporary contract, and my pay isn't exactly that good, too."
"Don't worry, I'll pay half the rent."
"But won't your wife find out?"
"We have separate wallets, and we don't pester each other with money. Whatever she wants to do with her money, she does it, and the same goes for me. Don't worry about her finding out."
That's what they were saying. I was convinced that this was the only reason Ronan was ever saving money. He never meant it when he said he was thinking about saving up in the event we conceive a child soon. I took multiple photographs of the exchange of messages between Ronan and Hannah. And, starting the next day, I began making various preparations to make sure that their plan to expire me would fail. During that time, Ronan bought me a used car. Ah, so this was how he was going to make it appear, huh? I instantly started to suspect he either deliberately bought a faulty car in the first place, or that he'd bought a decent car and disabled the brakes himself.
"I bought this car for you, Nancy. Why don't you take it out on a drive for a minute?"
"Oh no, I can't do that. I haven't driven any car since I got my license, and that was 5 years ago."
"Oh, come on now. It'll be okay. As long as you drive it around the block, you'll be fine."
"Oh, all right, I'll give it a spin." No matter how much I refused, he persisted in getting me to climb into the car and drive away. So I reluctantly agreed to get in the car eventually. And the next weekend, I arranged to drive the new car. Maybe Hannah and I can go shopping together in this car. I'm sure she would like that very much. When I said this, Ronan's expression immediately became stiff, and he resisted the idea very passionately. I honestly expected this reaction from him, and that was because this car was actually, well, you'll see in due time. I have to buy her a gift to congratulate her on getting pregnant, don't I? Oh, but hold on a second. I thought this car had broken brakes. Oh shit, well in that case, the radiant Hannah, pregnant with someone's baby, can't possibly ride in a car that would kill her. I'm the only one who can ride in it, and the brakes don't work. Oh, what a scary idea. When I transparently confronted Ronan with the truth, he looked at me wide-eyed in surprise. I can understand why he reacted this way because I evidently knew what he thought I didn't know. I know everything, Ronan. There's no escape, and I have the evidence. What are you going to do? Confess? I told him plainly as I looked him dead in the eye. His response was complacent laughter.
"What's the matter with you, Nancy? Have you lost your mind?"
Trying to get me to turn the other cheek now, are we?
"I don't know what you're talking about. Where the frick is all this coming from?"
This isn't the time for this stupid conversation. Go get Hannah, if you please.
"There's nothing going on between Hannah and I. I'll gladly bring her down. And be warned, Nancy. You're going to make life difficult for yourself from now on if you actively get people involved in something ridiculous like this."
Oh, don't worry. You won't even have to see me live that miserable life which you predict so confidently. Now bring me Hannah Warsnop. With that, the real Hannah Warsnop, not the friendly, talkative girl she appeared to be, but the lazy, vulgar, jealous bitch that she really was, came walking toward me with the frowning Ronan. "I hear you suspect me of having an affair with your husband, eh?" Hannah leered, and to that bold attitude, I uttered a response that turned the tables completely. "Keep talking, bitch, because it's the only time you can. Have a look at this," I said as I pulled out my cell phone. There it all was, all of the evidence I'd gathered myself. The photographs of her transaction with Ronan, and the recording of the conversation between the two of them at my house the other night, when I'd fallen asleep during the party. As a matter of fact, I just happened to have my cell phone in my hand that night when I fell asleep. And when I woke up and overheard them talking to each other so lovingly, I recorded the conversation as evidence for a potential affair. But then the conversation transpired as it did, and it became something far more important. And I'd also installed a security camera overlooking the new second-hand car he'd bought. The footage showed him actively working on changing a few things about it. I also have a friend whose husband is a skilled car mechanic. And when I consulted him as to what Ronan was trying to do here, he was certain he really was trying to make it seem like I was killed by faulty brakes. If only you were willing to solve the problem properly by doing the sensible thing, divorce me and pay me alimony, and none of this would have happened.
You bitch! Give me the freaking phone!
Hell no! Who in their right mind is going to give you this valuable evidence? Perhaps Ronan thought it would be bad for me to keep that evidence, and he attempted to take the phone away from me. As I was running away from him, trying to keep him just out of reach, when police sirens started wailing somewhere extremely close to our building. Ronan froze, as though he knew exactly what was going on.
Oh, there's no way.
And then 3 police officers barged in through the front door.
Mr. Ronan Gregory, you are under arrest under suspicion of attempted murder.
They proceeded to apprehend the struggling Ronan, pinning him to the floor and handcuffing him. He got up to his knees and nodded his head in defeat. Meanwhile, one of the officers prevented Hannah from escaping out the front door. And in the ensuing kerfuffle, she scratched the officer's face enough that he began to bleed. Reinforcements rushed to the screaming Hannah, who by this point was saying, "I had nothing to do with this."
You are an accomplice, Hannah Warsnop, and you will pay for your crimes.
"I had nothing to do with this, I swear. This man planned and did it all on his own." "Okay, then, maybe run your fingerprints then? If your fingerprints can be found on the backside of the car, the charge will be even more serious. You've already made yourself more guilty, Hannah. You inflicted considerable injury to that poor officer." "That's a lie. Oh no, I'm so sorry, please." In the end, she too gave up and was arrested. Then they were both convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison. So, as it turned out, Hannah was lying about her pregnancy. She lied because she wanted to marry Ronan, whom she had completely fallen for. I was so horrified to see her telling the court that she wanted to get rid of me, by which she testified that she intended to kill me because I was, quote, an obstacle in the happy times with darling Ronan. I was terrified of what would have happened if I hadn't found out when I woke up at the right time that night. It turned out that the two of them also had a strategy meeting about how they would tamper the car to make it so that it would seem I died in an accident.
So I buy a real used car, and then we do some work and make sure the brakes are wrecked. And that would be the end of her, wouldn't it?
But won't she find out?
If we buy a car so old that we don't even know when it was made, anyone would think it's simple car trouble.
Oh, Ronan, you're so smart.
I know, right? I surprise even myself sometimes. Let's start taking action tomorrow.
I hadn't witnessed the strategy meeting per se, but additional evidence surfaced over the course of the court case. And the police rushed to the scene at the right time because I had gone to talk to them beforehand. I told the chief of the unit on patrol himself everything Ronan and his accomplice were up to. And I also submitted the audio recording of my cell phone as evidence. The only reason they came that day was because I had notified the police in advance that I would be riding in my husband's car, which meant both of them would be present at the same place at the same night, in hopes of seeing me crash and burn, which also made for a very successful arrest. The injured officer received a few bandages and 3 days' rest. I later divorced Ronan and filed for alimony from him and from Hannah. My parents-in-law and the Warsnops got down on their knees and apologized to me so sincerely it was frankly painful. They were all very sweet folks. They offered to pay the alimony immediately, saying that they would shoulder the burden for now. They would make the 2 criminals pay them back in due time as well. The 2 lovebirds will be in jail for a while now, and while they may have had an affair in a casual, playful way, the consequences of an affair on both of them were very harsh. I then met a wonderful man and remarried. He is a very gentle and kind man who made me realize that it's okay to trust people again after such a traumatizing experience. This time. I want to make sure I do my part to make us both happy with our married life together. Wish me luck!